Right then, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the projections, the arguments that have been proffered about this budget. How is it going to be operationalized, implemented? And above all, remember, I'm not sure people will forget that in a hurry, lifting 100 million people out of poverty. What role can this budget play? Let's go to Abuja. Markwe.
Thank you, Chamberlain. We have with us this morning Honorable Yunusa Abubakar, PhD, a member, House Committee on AIDS, Loans and Debt Management. He's also a member of the All Progressives Congress. Honorable, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Well, thank you and good morning, viewers.
Good morning. Well, I'm not a viewer, but I think I can answer on their behalf. Just wondering, what are your thoughts and what were your immediate thoughts after listening to the President present the 2020 budget proposal?
Well, I was elated and...
Elated?
Yeah, very optimistic. You see, when you look at the overview globally, there has been a projection by the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, IMF. They globally projected that there's going to be some economic meltdown. In fact, they make a projection from 2018, from 3.6, it will slow down globally to 3.5% by 2020. When you now come to the sub-Saharan region, Africa, they projected a kind of a slow rise instead of the global trend. But when you pick out sub-Saharan Africa, there is that projection or perception that the economy will be growing but slowly. Now, when we trim it down to Nigeria, particularly where we belong, we will see that they are a little bit very, very optimistic, and they give us a kind of a kudos to the Nigerian economy. When you look at the Center for Economic Studies of Africa, they look at the Nigerian Economic Review. For goodness sake, we have to give kudos. We got out of, we exited recession at the end of 2017. And from that 2017, we have about 9 consecutive quarters of our GDP growth. We have a kind of overwhelming decline in inflation from 18 point something to 11.02 as I'm talking to you. So there are so many things that were put in place by the APC administration that really mitigate and is working. I remember sitting here one day when we were in the 8th Assembly, I really posited that the Nigerian economy is going the way the American economy was under Obama. The first tenure was a little bit rowdy, but by the end of Obama tenure, he left a robust economy to Americans. The same thing here. God has given the APC another success to be on board for the second term. They are now consolidating on the gain of the last 4 years. As of 2019 now...
I have to interrupt you, sir.
Yep.
You've made reference to the global economy and IMF World Bank reports. Now, on the front pages of the paper this morning, I'm not going to go too far, you see there, IMF cautions CBN on new loan policy, warns Nigeria over optimistic revenue projections. That is on the one hand. Daily Trust reports it a little differently. They say Buhari rejects World Bank IMF statistics on Nigeria. I'm trying to see this one. Leadership also has the same story. Lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty, PMB tells new economic team. Dismisses IMF World Bank reports on Nigeria. That's just on the front page this morning. Is it okay for us to keep picking and choosing which one of the World Bank statistics, we want to pick? Oh, yes, they say there's going to be a slowdown generally, but sub-Saharan Africa will, experience a growth. However, when they warn us on certain projections that we have made, we dismiss them. Is it really ethical to do things like that?
Well, we might attempt to be unethical, but in court. It's unethical, but in court, like I say. You see, sometimes the IMF sit down and it's a projection. And a projection, when they foresee a danger, they really caution which they are doing. Now, that is telling you that the future could be brighter if you really go against the factors so envisaged. That is, if you can find a way to mitigate them. And I think this is what the Nigeria, they just caution CBN, and CBN say, yes, we knew and we were concerned the parameters that we had to put in place or are in place, and the yielding, you know, you just interrupted me. I wanted to say that, look, there has been some gain. The economic growth recovery plan has put in place, which is helping us. If we haven't seen, or people have been talking Nigerian economy is going down, but we continue to see the decline in inflation and then the rise in GDP. Though in 2019 first quarter, it should have gone higher than the present what we have now. But yet, it has not gone. That gave rise because of the post-election crisis. You know, normally after the general election, there has been that kind of perception, the patronage and kind of, I don't know how to put it, but then people become a kind of apprehensive to what will come after the election. So that actually slowed down economic activities. But it has been picked now, after, especially now that the first presidential tribunal have ruled out in favor of the sitting government. So things are picked up. When you look at it as of yesterday, the indices are still not going to disappoint us. They are showing as favorable. So the IMF...
Which one of the indices are you referring to now?
Like, for instance, now, the non-oil revenue that have been given. Let me specifically give custom. The closure of our borders within the last 90 days has really beefed up the generation from custom. That is a very known fact. So it is adding to the non-oil revenue. Again, within these 90 days or after the election, we have seen that we have maintained a steady, robust daily crude production. It has never gone down. In fact, it has even gone up. So these are things to give us hope. And with the global oil trend...
Has it gone up to what we are projecting, is the question? Because you heard there Senator Inaya Abaribe talking about why we should be looking at 2.18 million barrels per day, when what we have been able to do so far is 1.8.
Good.
Why wouldn't
with
we
due
just...
respect to Senator Abaribe,
yes,
you see, we are not talking of now. This is a projection that is being envisaged from January to December 2020. We are now in 2019. If our daily production quota is sustained and is marginally increased, then it is envisaged that the global activity that is taking place, the China, US, the, what do you call it, Saudi Arabian oil, which are very independent, the Iranian, with all this, it is a kind of a projection that we want to take advantage to chip in or to cap in their activity so that we take the gains. Definitely, the oil prices is going to remain relatively higher than what was even predicated at $57 per barrel.
We're very certain of that.
Yeah, because of the global trend. Definitely, you don't expect the American war and the China war to come to an end within the near future. And that's what happened. We predicated and we took advantages of this crisis globally for the last 2 years. We leverage on it, and it has helped us. It's about risk taking. So if Nigeria is willing to take the risks, and the APC government has taken the risks, it favored us yesterday, it will favor us to do it, and in future, we hope to go that. It's very risky, but you see, when you don't take risks, you cannot prosper. Still, it is not failing us. And look at the VAT, the 2.5 increase that they added on VAT. Even Senegal here, Cote d'Ivoire, look at their VAT, about 15%. They are not even measured up to Nigeria. Why can't Nigeria raise it up? Still, Nigeria is the lowest in some of the African, even compared on its own peers. So to us, and this VAT, this appropriation bill that was laid by Mr. President was two components. There is a financial bill. Let us not forget that will now be, the law will be promulgated for this VAT. And the VAT, the effect on the common man is that there are issues like, beverages, baby food, some food items that affect a common man, me and you, and the other common man, are not going to be VATed. They have been exempted from VAT. There are some there are some exemption in the bill. These are palliative to cushion the effect on the common man. And then the social investment program that was put in place, which was an appendix, an attachee to an agency, now has been given a full-fledged ministry, seeing the impact. So it is to add up, to deepen the impact, so that it will provide at least to enhance the purchasing power of the common man. And you are, by so doing, invariably, you are lifting them out of poverty. It has worked previously and is going to work with a full-fledged Ministry of Humanitarian and this kind of scenario that is put in place. So by the first quarter of 2020, I am very optimistic, and you can take my word to the bank that the economy and the projections are going to be sustained.
I'm looking at debt servicing now. Quite a number of people have raised concerns about debt servicing. We have earmarked 2.45 trillion naira to service debt. The president says this to show our commitment to meeting our obligations. But there is also another amount of money for the deficit in the budget, because the total revenue which we project here will not be able to meet the total expenditure, which it is. So there is also a deficit, 2.18. So we're still going to be it will say we're still going to be looking to get more loans in spite of how much we're already spending on debt servicing. Is it really sustainable?
Good. It is sustainable. 2018, when you look at the budget period of 2018, which expires last June, June 2019, the debt components, the servicing component in the 2018, what do you call it, budget, it is a law. It has been met. This government has met the projection it made in 2018 budget. So if it has paid off debt, the whole cycle, a business cycle, when you look at Nigeria as a business conglomerate, the more you take debt and the more you service it, both the lender and the creditor are comfortable. So if we can service our debt of last year, and this 2019 we are going to have a little problem, because the budget was just passed in May, and the full releases were September ending. And now, till the end of the year, there's going to be projection. But you see, when we comment this January, the life cycle of the 2019 budget is going to be cut short by about 5 months or so. Because when we now implement the January cycle, we will have to, so there has to be a kind of a rollover, and that is the duty of the National Assembly, to look at the document presented by Mr. President. If it has not taken into cognizance this, then we have to roll over some of the gains in the 2019 to augment the 2020. Now, as to your question of borrowing, if Nigeria feels comfortable it can service its debt for the last year, what then stopped him from taking a debt for the next year? That is the issue. I borrow your money and I paid you, and I now come to you as a banker to borrow me again. Will you stop? You say yes. That is the essence of the business cycle. The difficulty and the danger there is that when I borrow, I didn't pay. I borrow, I didn't service. So if Nigeria, if they have now provided a window of about 2.something trillion for debt servicing, and look at the component of the debt servicing is more of an internally or domestic debt. We are not talking of the foreign and the national debt, because the foreign national debt component, the interest rate is very, very low compared to the internal debt. So what we are having is that it's our domestic debt. Part of this domestic debt is salary, as it is capital on the federal government. And the federal government, considering 2018 up to this second quarter or the third quarter of 2019, which begins by at least from September, end from September, that is the third quarter. No, January, February, March, April, May, June. June is the end of second quarter. But by July, August specifically, all salaries, running costs, overhead has been met. So if this is the major, the major domestic debt to pay salaries and liabilities.
Let's go to Lagos now and take a question or two. Gentlemen.
Well, thank you, Mark. But, I mean, 2018 that he referenced, actually, of the 3-point-something trillion naira we generated, I think about 2-point-something trillion naira was for debt servicing. I mean, that's a large chunk of the money that we generated. But moving forward now, the president has said, for example, they're looking forward to cutting costs in the MDAs. And he mentioned a certain performance review such that, I mean, the kind of performance you put in might eventually be the amount of money that will be given to you eventually. Now, that's on the executive side. For the legislature, are you looking at, cutting cost of governance also such that we don't have this much budget deficit?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. In fact, this is my area that yesterday I had wanted to stand up on the floor of the House. And the moment I left this studio, this will be my contribution. 2017 and 2018, in my debate, I really draw attention of our colleagues, that is especially in the chamber, the Green Chamber, to really look at where we are going to cut costs. We have a lot of, when you look at the running cost and the overhead, that is the recurrent component of the budget. A lot of MDAs have what you call consumables, electronics. And when you look at the years after the other, you see that there are repetitive kind of buying computers. You bought computer last year, and you are now buying another set of computers. What happened to the computers you bought last year? Were they damaged? Can they repair? So we are now trying to apply during oversight, and we did, and it worked effectively 2018, and we believe we are going to use it as a sledgehammer to really veto, or not veto actually, to peruse the 2020 documents presented before we pass it into law. Any agency that we discover this kind of repetitive, cumbersome purchases on these electronic office wares where we can cut costs. For goodness sake, we don't normally buy stationaries. We have what you call kind of library now, documentation and preservation. Why must we continue going analog and waste money? That is one. Two, already the government has put in place, there are people like from director cadre and what have you, they have stopped flying business class for, traveling. So T&T, traveling and expenses too, is part of the place where they are going to cut costs. And also provision and maintenance of operational vehicle. For goodness sake, there are so many vehicles, and the maintenance, factor cost is very high, which we invariably, and I think this 9th Assembly, want to really pay tribute to scrutinize every agency submission despite the time constraint. These are areas we are going to see to cut costs and add. Because our target is to really close the gap. Not just closing the gap, but until we achieve a budget component that the capital component is indeed higher than the recurrent component.
All right, Honorable, many also wonder, but the National Assembly themselves too, don't they buy some of this stationery year on year, as a matter of fact? So what's going to happen to all of those ones? Then secondly, given this budget, which has been tagged job creation and growth, where do you think or see these jobs will come from? Because if I'm just looking at it, wondering concerning the private sector and investment in some of these other areas, from your perspective and from what you've seen, where do you see these jobs, and what amount of jobs do you think that's being targeted here?
Okay. First, the first aspect of your question of the National Assembly stationaries. In the National Assembly, it's a kind of a fixed kind of expenditure. And when you take overall the whole budget of the National Assembly, compare it to the budget component of the nation, is less than 2%. And I want the viewers to really cue in to know that the money that is being spent 100% in the National Assembly, if we are going to get it, is not up to 2% of the national budget. So we can't just be concentrating and dissipating energy on 2% of the component of budget, forgetting about the 98%. That is one. Then the stationaries, I want to say in the National Assembly, is insignificant. We are more comfortable that in the 9th Assembly, when the Speaker was giving his opening address that we are going to go, it is going to be an E kind of assembly. So, and automatically now we have gone E because most of our notice papers, order papers are now sent electronically to members. And the paper circulation has been reduced. Members are being encouraged now that instead of bringing your motion on the papers, hard copy, send soft copy, send it to the Rules and Business Department. There is a system that they can rebroadcast to all the members to have it as a kind of a motion on notice and so on and so forth. Having said that, we come to the other one, job creation, which is one of the fundamental targets of this budget. Yeah, the agricultural aspect is there. You can see down, don't talk even about the federal government. The livestock, National Livestock Project is taking place. Especially it has picked up in about 11 or so states. Agricultural aspect is also there, though livestock is part of agri. There are, in fact, I just saw, was it governor, one of these governors in the southeast is now partnering the north. Emefiele was there to commission a kind of garment factory and commanding all our military and paramilitary personnel to really buy their garment there. It's going to provide jobs. Now, generally, Manufacturing Association of Nigeria paid a courtesy call of Mr. President, and they according because of the palliative and the money given to them. There is also a window in Central Bank for all to revamp these our moribund industries. So job is going to be abound, and I am very, very confident that the government will live up to its expectation. Just yesterday, after the budget was presented, the newly economic team that was formed by Mr. President were summoned and they were in a meeting. And I think I wanted even to get the outcome of their discussion before I come here. But I believe that will be a subject for another day. But let us be very, very optimistic, and we are very, very confident that all the projection made here, this is the last lap of this administration under Muhammadu Buhari, and is going to be delivered. Okay, and by the
very quickly, let's see if we can answer this as quickly as possible. One of the things that the president said on fiscal efficiency is also there, and he talked about rewarding exceptional revenue and cost management performance, while severe consequences will attend failures to achieve agreed revenue targets. Question here is, from the Auditor General's report of 2016, there are many, many loopholes that were, many leakages, beg your pardon, that were noticed in that report, and many of them actually, and the Auditor General is asking who is going to, how this money is going to be refunded to government. So is there anything the National Assembly can do or is doing, maybe in its oversight functions, to block and plug these loopholes?
Not just doing, in fact, or going to be done. It is already doing, even before the placement of the standing committees. This non-assembly consider an ad hoc committee, and they are looking into these loopholes. Legislative continue from the 8th assembly. There was a report. In fact, this thing that you are saying, it was the National Assembly during its own oversight function that brought out all these loopholes and advised during the legislative by the Legislative Compliance Committee and due the attention of the executive. And that is why the president felt there is a danger there, and he sounded that warning that he is now going to use carrot and stick to summarize what he said. So going further, it is the intention of this National Assembly. The ad hoc committee will be winding up, I think, if not last week, this week. They are winding up to give their own report. But further, I think we are going to add up to really fish out those agencies, especially revenue generating agencies where these loopholes are there. We mark them, and it's going to be a business, not going to be business as usual. So definitely the president means what, and it is in tandem with what the executive advised him, and we are the watchdogs, we are the police, and we are going to fish out by the special grace of God.
Okay, it's a fine place to leave it. We have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Honorable Yunus Abubakar, a PhD, is a member House Committee on AIDS, Loans and Debt Management, and also a member of the All Progressives Congress. Sunrise Daily continues in a moment. Please stay with us.